Tonight, on First Tuesday...
Will you retire?
I didn't hear what you said, Mr.
If you lost this fight, would you retire?
I still can't hear what you're saying.
A world champion returns to the ring and the risk. And on a last visit to Austria, the heroine of The Sound of Music, Baroness Maria Von Trapp.
Either stay and say Heil Hitler, or get out, but quick.
Hello and welcome to the September edition of First Tuesday. We start tonight with a sport. At least that's what it's called, even if some of its heroes end their days with little to show for it but the brain damage. Boxing is a dangerous game. You may remember that when the greatest of the greats, Muhammad Ali, came to Britain a few weeks ago, the experts were much preoccupied with the way he spoke and moved, suggesting none too discreetly that the man who could once float like a butterfly and sting like a bee had been punched in the face a little too often for his health. At least, though, he made boxing pay. Many others end up with nothing. In The Shadow Boxer, we follow the fortunes of a British world champion who was a national hero when he retired. But then he was driven back to the ring at the age of 37, when most boxers have long since given up.
The lightweight championship of the world. Introducing from Scotland. He's wearing plaid trunks. He weighs 133.5 pounds. The lightweight champion of the world, Ken Buchanan.
13 years after he won that World Lightweight Championship, Ken Buchanan is back in training on the Edinburgh Council estate where he now lives. Once, he was one of the most stylish punchers in the history of boxing. Now, he's almost 38, greying a little, and probably the oldest fighter still boxing in Britain. At his age, the risk of serious damage to brain or eyes must be high. But Ken says he has no choice. He's in debt, and boxing is his only way out.
I'm certainly not down. I'm not at the top, but I'm not down. I'm sort of bouncing about in the middle. But I'm quite happy, you know what I mean? I'm not down, I'm quite happy. You know, I'm sorry I have to go back to boxing. I have to go back to boxing, but I'm just doing what I think I know best to make money at. And boxing is the thing.
Why are you sorry that you have to go back to it?
Because of the fact that I built up such a big reputation and done things that no other fighter in Britain's ever done in their life. In the history of boxing, I've got awards that no other British fighter's ever won from America. I mean, I'm the only fighter in Britain in the history of boxing that ever won the Fight of the Year award. You know, things like that, and I was so well respected, and then I went back, and I'm certainly not going to do my career any good. I know that myself. Because who can, when you've been through it your younger years, who can expect you to go back and be half as good as what you were when you were champion?
Now the former world champion, once affectionately known in Edinburgh as the scuffler with a muffler, works as a joiner. It's a trade he learnt before hitting the boxing heights. The £100 a week wages are a far cry from the big money he earned as a boxer, but Ken's just pleased to have a job. His employer and sponsor is Edinburgh club owner Eddie Ramsey, but even he wants Ken to retire from the ring.
I'd like to see him retiring because I simply don't want to see him being hurt, because he is 37-year-old and he is past the boxing age, and I think to see him being hurt, the only way to stop boxing is to hang your gloves up.
Have you asked him to do that?
Yeah, I've asked him 2 or 3 times, and he obviously says, well, I'm feeling really well inside myself, I'll just maybe do another 2 or 3 fights and call it a day.
After work, Ken trains at the same backstreet gym where he began boxing as a boy of 8.
Just a pure accident. At Christmas time, an aunt gave him a present of a pair of small boxing gloves. Could have been cricket bat, could have been anything. Just happened to be boxing gloves. And he decided he wanted to go into the boxing. He'd only been here a matter of weeks when his trainer in the club, he said, there's a future champion there. Now, he didn't know I was his father at the time. And I was surprised. I said, he's only been here a few weeks. I know, but he's a natural.
By his teens, Ken was already demonstrating his extraordinary skill in the ring. Quitting his trade as a joiner, he turned professional. Within 5 years, he won the Scottish, British and European crowns. Then in 1970, his first world title fight against Ismael Laguna in Puerto Rico.
And a sign of desperation from Laguna. Doesn't know how to nail Buchanan. Well, that's it. They're certainly pleased to hear the bell.
I was completely shattered after the fight. I was absolutely knackered. But, you know, I lost about 8-9 pounds during the fight. I mean, I'm a lightweight, not like a heavyweight. If a heavyweight loses that, so, but, you know, 15 rounds, and, you know, you imagine 100 odd degrees in Spain and having to fight 15 rounds for the World Championship, and the guy wanting to knock your head off. You know, I knew by the time I got back to the dressing room I was World Champion. You know, tears were just running down my face because, you know, the person I wanted to be there was my mum, like, you know, and she, you know, that's what she always wanted to see me like, being a World Champion. My dad and I, we just sort of held each other, we were bloody well greeting, like, you know. I think it was just a natural reaction, like, you know. It wasn't any champagne parties and thinking of the high life, you know. It's just simply I'd done it and I wanted to get back home.
A year later, the return fight in boxing's most famous stadium, Madison Square Garden, New York.
The referee looks at the left eye of Buchanan. It's not a pretty sight. Buchanan's face a crimson smear. And the blood is on the trunks of Laguna. Again, the referee looks at that eye. Buchanan's eye is in terrible shape, but he's doing well in the fighting.
I've got a split in my eye. I mean, that split needed 11 stitches to pull it together. And that's just an idea as to how long the stitch was. You went from there right round. And I was cut under this eye. But by this time, the time this eye got cut, my eye was shut anyway.
Buchanan, knowing he's in trouble with that eye, is trying for a knockout desperately. It's an angry sight. Here's a close-up of Buchanan's face. You can see that blood. The doctor is in there. There's Dr. Campbell looking at the ministration.
My cornerman Eddie done a tremendous job. He slipped my eye with a razor blade, and we got all the blood out and all the information and everything out, and it was just a matter of hoping that the referee would let the fight go on.
Slitting your eye with a razor sounds like drastic action.
Well, it was. It had to be the drastic action. If I hadn't done that, I would have got stopped. And I was more concerned about the fact that the referee stopped the fight and giving it to him, because I was ahead in points.
Head's bleeding again around that eye. I hate to dwell on it, but it's part of the drama. The bell will sound in a moment. And there it is. The boys throw their arms around each other. I guess each boy thinks he's won, and here it is. Here it is, Johnny Addy. Judge Tony Castellano. 8-6, 1 even, Buchanan. Referee Jimmy Devlin, 9-6, Buchanan. Buchanan is the winner and still champion. Lightweight champion of the Buchanan. A very fine lightweight champion of the world.
Ken Buchanan, world lightweight champion, took the Sportsman's Award, the first British boxer to win and retain a world title in the USA since Kid Lewis. The Sports Writers Association awarded Princess Anne the title for her success in the European three-day equestrian event. The two champions tried out some fancy footwork on the dance floor.
Pushing 40, the fancy footwork is slower now. Too old for a license to box, Ken's next fight is an unofficial bout in a small hall. But what did happen to all the winnings?
We didn't have big swimming pools in the back garden and saunas in the house and that, like, you know, we had a lovely house. And that was the main thing. And also it managed to get me a hotel.
His two world title fights brought him in about $250,000. That's a fair bit of money then.
What's happened to all that money?
Well, he bought a hotel, and unfortunately He was a champion boxer in the ring, but he wasn't a champion businessman.
Ken's marriage also fell apart, leading to an expensive divorce. But Ken's very close to his children, Karen and Mark. His son now watches Dad train, but Ken doesn't want Mark to box.
I've pretty well put him up at, like, you know, I show him all the rotten photographs, you know, my burst eyes and bad hands and burst noses and lips and that. And I take him down to the Jimmy Revie fight. And, you know, if anything goes wrong there, like if I get hurt with that, like, you know, I'm quite happy in some respects because, I mean, it's going to deter him from going into boxing. I don't want to see him boxing. I'm not saying boxing is a bad thing or anything like that, but he doesn't have any go for boxing. He's no interested at all. And I don't want him to take up boxing because of the fact that his dad was a world champion.
At 69, Tom Buchanan still helps his son train, although he doesn't welcome his comeback. The prospect of Ken's next match, a small unlicensed fight in London's East End, is a cause of some sadness.
When you've been at the top like he was, and he's down to fighting 8-round fights in small halls, it really hurts. He had always said he would quit at the top. And when he retired in '75, he was still undefeated European champion. And then things didn't go quite right with him, and he made a comeback. Unfortunately, he stayed at the ring for 4 years, almost 5 years before he made his comeback, and that's a terrible long time. He has lost fights to some fighters that once upon a time couldn't have hit him with a long-handled brush. I'm frightened he may get hurt. I never had that fear when he was in his prime before he retired. That was the funny thing. People used to say to me, well, you're not frightened if someone will get hurt in the ring. And I say, well, I never see him getting hurt.
You're helping Ken now make his comeback. That's his second comeback after a period of retirement. What do you think about that?
Oh, I wish it never happened.
London's Old Kent Road, above the Thomas à Becket pub, the way in for the fight.
Right, on Ken's way.
Ken's done 2.
10 stone,
Yeah.
Ken Buchanan, 10 stone 2 pounds.
Ken's opponent is Jimmy Revie, 32, and a former British featherweight champion.
Jimmy Revie, 10 stone 1.5 pound. Oh, I love it.
The promoter is Joe Carrington, a dealer in bankrupt stock from Romford.
Right. Yeah.
The York Hall in London's East End is a far cry from Madison Square Garden. The days of the star dressing room are gone. Ken has to share like everyone else. At his age, the risk of one fight too many is obvious. The purse, £1,250, with half of that going in expenses.
Oh, he's here as well.
Oh, we've got a gang here tonight.
Well, the Buchanan clan's here tonight. I'll tell you where you're charged.
All ready.
Rocky
should be all right with him. Rocky 4.
Yeah.
I'm going to win, that's one thing. I can't afford to lose. I'm out there. I'm basically fighting for my life, and I don't expect I'll never be a world champion again or anything like that. I know that sort of thing's not within my capabilities, but do quite well in the game over the next, year or two, and I'll be quite happy.
If you lose the fight, will you retire?
I didn't hear what you said now.
If you lost this fight, would you retire?
I still can't hear what you're saying. I don't like talking like that. I know when I'm just about to go into the ring.
hurry now, in any hurry, relax. Throw a double left jab and throw a left hook side. Watch for your chance. Kid on, you're going to throw. You've missed and he was crossing.
Cut him short, Ken! Cut him short!
The end of round 6. Once again, Ken's eye is bleeding badly.
Sponge, a quick sponge. Go, Ken. Gum shield. Gum shield. Now, shorten that right hand, son, okay?
Ken has been beaten in 4 of his last 5 fights. This one, he can't afford to lose.
I can't wait away, Johnny, but I was trying too hard.
Oh, don't kick.
I was trying too hard, like, you know. Is he my son? Aye. I felt it was there all the time. It's just that we were throwing that right hand just too wide or too low.
You caught the right hands early on.
Before you went in, you said you were fighting for your life. Did it feel like that when you were in there?
Oh, Christ, aye. Oh, well, I didn't come out looking like this every day, like, you know. I certainly was fighting for my life in a lot of respects, yeah. I was fighting for Ken Buchanan.
You
and
cried?
And Mark and Karen. Oh, aye. Really? Come on. Getting all emotional there.
Buchanan is the winner and still champion. Ken Buchanan, the very fine lightweight champion of the world.
Well, that fight, as it happened, should be the last of Ken Buchanan's career. Last month, he decided he'd had enough and announced, you might think wisely, his retirement. Good luck to him. And now, Jane Walmsley, who's been meeting a really rather remarkable woman.
Well, the woman is the Baroness Maria Von Trapp, who will tell us the true story behind The Sound of Music. So join us right after the break. Welcome back. The Julie Andrews film, The Sound of Music, occupies a unique place in the popular culture of the 20th century. In its day, it broke all box office records with a story of innocence and courage which caught the imagination of millions. Several Hollywood studios nearly went bankrupt trying to follow it up with similar lavish musical spectaculars, but they failed to reproduce The Sound of Music's successful formula. There was something magic about the combination of songs, scenery, and a wonderful romantic story. And of course, it's based on a true story of the Baroness Maria Von Trapp. Now, earlier this year, the real Maria, who has a much better tale to tell than Hollywood's version, returned to the city where her story began, Salzberg. Maria Von Trapp is now a widow. The Baron died in 1947, and she made the trip from her home in the United States, accompanied by the eldest of the Von Trapp children, her stepson Rupert. She's nearly 80, and she doesn't expect to see her homeland again. For the last time in her extraordinary life, she went to see the city, her friends, and the mountains where it all began. It was in these hills that the real Maria started to relive her story.
Well, we finished school. We took a trip into the mountains, and it was so gorgeous and so beautiful. I love to climb mountains. I felt close to God up in the mountains. And I was standing there and I thought, this is so wonderful. God gave that to me, what can I give him? I will go into a convent which is so strict that I will never be allowed to come out. And this will be my present to God. And I walked right down and came to Salzburg, came to Nürnberg here, and wanted to stay forever and ever. I spent the most beautiful time of my life here. many years ago. And then I went away, and not only away, but far away, all over to America, in a completely different life. And now I'm back, and I'm back in my old abbey, and that's very wonderful.
For over 1,000 years, the doors to the outside world have been closed on this Benedictine sisterhood. From the years when Maria was a novice, only a very few remain.
5 abbesses since I was here. This is the 5th. They are the friends of my youth. This is the one with whom I was in a novitiate. And she is here 60 years. We were 2 opposites, but we had changeless beauty, Nana. She was always good, and I was always bad. And I was constantly in trouble. I was always transgressing something, you know. I came down rolling on the banisters, and I just behaved very nun-like. I didn't really fit, you see. I was such a tomboy and had such crazy ideas. So after 2 years, I was sent out to the suburbs, the Villa Trapp in Eigen, on the foot of the mountain, on the foot of the Salzberg. And there was Captain Von Trapp, and he needed a teacher for one of his children. And the nuns sent me. An abbess doesn't ask you, she just tells you. She sends you, and this is obedience. And in obedience I went. I only left for 1 year, and I was absolutely certain of that. That was the agreement, and then God changed it. I'm glad he did.
Maria the novice knew of the Captain Von Trapp. He was a much-decorated war hero who had been left a widower when his English wife, formerly Lady Whitehead, died in childbirth while having her 7th child. This is the house to which Maria came 60 years ago, the Villa Trapp.
I'm full of emotions. After so many years, to be back at the beginning where it all started. The whole thing was overwhelming and immense, and for me unheard of. It was a household in high style. There were, I think, 8 servants. The very first day when I came, I was standing outside in the hall, and the captain took his boatsman's whistle and blew the signals. And there you heard doors crashing and steps coming and down the banister, and there assembled an immense crowd of children. And here are these 7 children without a mother. I have to do my best, becoming a substitute. I grew up without being kissed, with an old foster mother, and it was just not the habit in her house. And then I came here into this house, and one of the little ones, Johanna, she was 9 years, she was 7 years old. And spontaneously she came up, you see, and put her hands around my neck and kissed me. And I remember the sensation very well. It was the first conscious kiss of my life.
Rupert, can you remember what you thought of this young woman who had come into your house?
She came to teach my second sister, Maria, and we called her Mitzi. And so that she was taken for granted, probably.
The man of the house was supposed to be a captain. So I was nervous when I came. And then it turned out differently. Mostly he was very kind. Very kind and very understanding.
Maria, one of the things you did was to teach them all to sing. Is that right?
I wanted to sing with the children, and they didn't know any songs I knew, you know. And so we just sat down, you see, and on the ground, on the floor, in front of the fireplace, which was over there. And I began to sing with them. and teach them. And that's the way it started. I remember how the children talked among each other, how they could possibly stop me from going back to the convent. The time was coming closer and closer, and finally there were only 2 weeks left, after which I would have returned to my abbey. And they got the good idea to go to their father and tell him he has to marry me, and then I can't leave. And so they ran into this room, you see, the library, where he sat at his desk, and said, "Papa, you have to marry her in order to keep her here." And he just lightly said, "Oh, I don't even know whether she likes me." They ran out and ran to the next room where I was cleaning a chandelier. And they said, "Maria, do you like our father?" Now, what do you answer children asking that question? "Of course I do," I said, down from the ladder. They ran back and said to the father, "Of course she does," she said. On the evening of that day, when I had put them to bed and I was standing again in the big living room cleaning something or other, he came in and said, "That was awfully nice of you." And I looked astonished and said, "What?" "Oh, aren't we engaged?" And I remember I held a very precious vase in my hands, and bang went that vase, you see, and broke into 100 pieces. And I had that awkward feeling there's something wrong with him up here. What a question. And as I look back, there must have been some element of liking there already, because I felt sorry for him. And I thought, well, how can I break the news to him so he can understand? And I said, "Well, just wait a minute." And I ran out, back into town, and I really practically ran up the hill, 144 steps, into my abbey, into the parlor, asking for Reverend Mother and telling her. And then she disappeared and she talked to the rest of the sisters. Then she came back and she said, "We prayed to the Holy Spirit what should be done now. And we found out that it is the will of God that you rather stay and marry the father of the children than you come here." And I was so crushed, because it's the last thing I expected. I had run into town, and was heißt schleichen auf English?
Sneaked.
I sneaked slowly back, as slowly as I could, hoping by that time everybody will be gone to bed and I won't have to face anybody, not today. And when I came back, the whole house was dark except for the 2 windows, these 2 windows of the library, which were the room of the captain, and he was standing right in the middle of the lobby. And as I came in, all he said was, "And?" And I was overwhelmed by that question, and I started sobbing and said, "They have told me I have to marry you." And that was our engagement. I was married at the convent. And I remember so well how on my wedding day, I was in the abbey already. And the big, heavy oak door of the abbey opened. And the wedding party came in from the outside. And here I came out, you see, dressed as a bride. And there were the 2 boys, Rupert and his brother Werner, were waiting for me, and they took my hands. And my very soon-to-be husband was led by the two girls, Agatha and Maria, and the three little ones, Hedwig, Johanna and Martina, were fighting for my train, stepping on it from time to time, and then sang. And it was all very, 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 very beautiful.
Maria settled down to her unexpected family life. Over the next few years, she and the Baron had 2 more children, both daughters. But her faith and music were still playing a major role in her life. It was a young priest who was responsible for creating the Trapp family singers. The priest whom Maria wanted to see again on this last visit. They first met at the Villa Trapp, Easter 1935.
We had a chapel in the house. And at the first morning when he said Mass, we sang. And unknowingly, you see, we exposed ourselves to his shivering ears, because he heard right away all the mistakes we made, you know. Father Wasner. You know, seeing him again was so normal, so natural, as if he had just walked out yesterday. And here he is again. He was so very much a part of us. He took over automatically and told us not to do this, but to do that. And he slowly but surely molded us into a real musical entity. He's an excellent musician. And we were not musicians, we were just a family who loved to sing.
They were remarkable, singing in 4 parts, very beautifully. At the Mass they sang some hymns, and I commented upon them, upon the singing.
And Father Wagner said, whatever you sang this morning was quite nice, but. And that but was the decision for our life, you see. On that but
grew the Trapp family singers.
Grew the Trapp family singers.
They were in a way unique, because the sound of people from all of one family, the unified sound that was a natural thing for which others have to work hard, they had it by nature. One thing gave way to the other. There was no fixed plan, as if we had planned the life story of the Trapp family singers and their world success. The light came from day to day, and from week to week, and from year to year. There was a song competition within the framework of the Salzberg Festival at the Mozarteum.
And we simply entered, you know, and to our own great amazement, you see, we made the first prize.
We were invited by the then Chancellor Schuschnigg to come to Vienna and participate in a big feast party that he arranged in the Belvedere Palace of Vienna for ambassadors and generals and big people of all kinds. All these years were years of great experiences, which otherwise I would never have made in my life.
In 1938, Adolf Hitler returned to his native Austria.
In Salzburg, Hitler lived more or less across the border. He could see Salzburg from where he stayed. And he made very emotional remarks. My beloved Salzburg, I will come soon. See, and all these elements in Salzburg and in the country who had belonged secretly to the party were on top now, you know, listening greedily to these emotional addresses by Hitler.
Ich proklamiere nunmehr für dieses Land seine neue Mission.
I don't remember exactly how long I watched him, but I would say at least an hour. And I was getting more and more and more flabbergasted that this man finally stands up and plays the Führer for a whole nation. And the whole nation is following him. I was just plain amazed how vulgar he was. No manners. He was somebody you wouldn't want to have in your living room.
But in the Von Trapp living room, there was a Nazi.
During our meals, we talked very openly, anti-Nazi, anti-Hitler. And he served the meal, you see, our butler, and he heard all that. And he really could have turned us over to the Gestapo, but he was loyal. But I remember with goose pimples right now, how in that night, he came into the room, into this room, and he stepped up to the captain and said, "Now I have to tell you." And he turned his lapel, and there was the Hakenkreuz, the sign of the Nazis, which he had had all the time, and with which, you see, he had served our meals and heard all our tender remarks about the Nazis, and never had given us up. It was very noble. But from then on, you see, we had to be careful. They really tried desperately to keep us as a show car. The Trapp families being pro-Hitler. They wanted the Trapp family singers to sing for Hitler's birthday. And so, either stay and say Heil Hitler, or get out, but quick. And that's what we did.
How did you get out?
Very unsentimental and very simple. We walked out, the big door outside here, walked around our park, our garden, to the little railway station for local trains. And our neighbors, you see, had been used to the picture of the Trapp family with rucksack, going for hikes. So they didn't think anything. And we took a train, you see, and I remember it was so tense that for a long time none of us talked. We were frozen. And that lasted quite a while until we were across the border. It was so close, you see, it was such a close shave. And a great sigh of relief after we had gotten into Italy. When the Nazis realized that we had escaped them, really escaped them, by the skin of our teeth, they closed
They closed the border.
They closed the border.
And after your escape, what happened to this house during the war?
Well, during the war years, it became the headquarters for Hitler and Himmler if they came into Austria.
And there's still today a round table with swastikas engraved around the border from Himmler's times. He had communications huts all through the garden. He had direct lines to the Wolfschanze, to Berlin, to Munich, to the Western Front.
In live contact with Hitler at all times.
Did you think that you had seen this house for the last time?
As the situation was, you see, it was most likely. Because Hitler had talked about the 1000-year Reich, das 1000-jährige Reich. He had come to stay, and he really had come now.
So the Trapp family went. They sailed to New York with only vague promises of bookings for concerts. They had left everything behind.
We had $4, all of us together. It was a difficult beginning. Simply to buy the daily food, you see, we had to fight for every dollar. We rented a bus, and we practically lived in that bus for 6 or 8 months, touring all over the country, you see, and giving concerts.
With their simple charm, the Trapp family singers won instant success, in time becoming the most heavily booked single attraction in American concert history. Their private lives figured in newsreels. This is 1942, by which time Maria could introduce the last addition to the singing family, their son, Johannes.
And on this farm he had some cow, chicks, E-I-E-I-O.
They had settled in the northern state of Vermont because it reminded them of their homeland.
We heard how very much broken down Austria was. The people were not only hungry, but they were completely destitute. And I used our concerts to make a little speech during the intermission. And I said, I want to tell you what a terrible situation there is in Austria. And we are now correcting. And we are just plain correcting everything. Anything you can spare, let us have it and we pass it on. And it worked beautifully.
Following successful worldwide tours, the Trapp family singers eventually decided to stay home. And they gave a farewell concert at Christmas 1955. But of course, it didn't end there, because Rodgers and Hammerstein created The Sound of Music around Maria's story. And Hollywood and Julie Andrews went to Salzberg.
When we heard that they are going to make a film, we were all really worried. We had no chance to talk to those people while they were making it. We were getting more and more worried. What are they going to do with us? So when I finally saw the film, I was so relieved and really quite happy about it. It's a good film and it is almost completely correct.
The film version of The Sound of Music was a terrific financial success.
But not for us. We have the rare talent always to miss the moment when we should come in and have a manager or have somebody to take our side, you know. But I'm pretty sure that God didn't want it. He wanted us to go on living the way we do and attract people to that type of life. And so that's that.
Maria is living out the legend that has given her, if not wealth, then worldwide fame. Her story will always retain its appeal, because incredibly, the truth seems to be more romantic than even Hollywood made it.
In Salzburg und wir freuen uns, dass wir da sind.
Es ist aber sehr leer.
Und es wird edelweiß haben wir jetzt Musik gesungen.
Ja.
At the end of the visit, the Salzburgers said goodbye with the song and the flower that through Maria has come to characterize their country, Edelweiß. Maria herself wanted to make a final pilgrimage to the high hill she could see through her convent window. The hill she had climbed so often with her family, and beneath which lay the Villa Trapp.
It's the home mountain of Salzburg, the Salzberg. From there, you really see all over Salzburg.
From here, she could review her life and the lives of her children.
Rupert is a doctor. Maria is in New Guinea, and she's a missionary. Werner is at home. He has a big farm. Hedwig died. Some are still working at the Trapp family lodge in Stowe, Vermont. Behind our home, in Vermont, we have a little graveyard, and there's the captain, and Martina, and Hedwig, and it's like a little garden. This is where I will be. It's very nice to know. I feel like in a story. It's all like a really beautiful story, which happened to be true.
Well, to me, she certainly seemed a lot less sugary than in the movie version, Jane.
No, not sugary. She's a remarkable lady, and what you'd call, I think, in today's terms, a real survivor.
Evidently. Anyway, that's about all for this month. In October, we'll be back at a different time, 9 o'clock, with, among other things, a film that we've made in America's most notorious jail, San Quentin, where riots and killings are commonplace and where they keep order with guns. Here's a brief taste of what it's like.
Apparently, in one of the adjacent blocks, there's been a violent incident. The incident had to be contained by gunfire. This is to say that warning shots had been fired and were ignored.
Well, there'll be more of San Quentin in First Tuesday next month at 9 o'clock. That's the first Tuesday in October. See you then, I hope. Good night.